Okay, so Be'ezras Hashem, we are continuing with our weekly shirim on the Ramchal's Adir BaMarom commentary to the Idrab. We're still in the sugya of the sa'aros, of the hairs of the skull, which are the pipelines through which HaKadosh Baruch Hu reveals his infinite light. All of these discussions are ultimately trying to grasp that which we can't grasp, to understand that we can't understand, but to first go through the process of understanding and then to realize that even with all of our understanding, we can never understand. The infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself, Kaviyachol, that's which we can never understand. But we can attempt to understand. And the way in which we try and understand is the Seder HaShtalshelis that's revealed to us through the words of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and Rabbeinu Ha'arizal, and the tzaddikim that come forth from the Nahar HaYotzim Yeden of Rabbeinu Ha'arizal. And all of these configurations and forms which are not forms, and shapes which are not shapes, and measures which are not measures, and metaphors which are not metaphors, all of these things that we're discussing from the Idra and the Ramchal's miraculous commentary on it, which is based fundamentally on the teachings of Rabbeinu Ha'arizal, all of it is giving shape to that which will ultimately be revealed to be the vessel that holds that which is shapeless, the infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So when we're talking about the hairs, we're talking about the ways in which we can conceivably come to find the infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu coming down into our minds. And when we become aware of that, we reactivate it. This is the secret of how HaKadosh Baruch Hu is revealing himself to us. And each and everything can be transformed into a yichud. They're all meant to be pathways as well of consciousness, of becoming aware of what consciousness is and what reality is, and how to ultimately grapple with reality and face reality and subdue reality and transform reality and reveal from within the heart of reality itself the ultimate goodness that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has planted at the core of existence at every moment. The general all-inclusive desire of HaKadosh Baruch Hu to create a world in which we can enjoy his presence. Lahanos l'nevra'av, to give pleasure, to give goodness, to give light to his creatures. Now, we don't know anything, but we know this. And we have to reconfirm always and forever the goodness that is being revealed from within these miraculous things that the tzaddikim are being megala. And so we spoke of the sa'aros of the Gilgalta, and last week we spoke about the first tikkun. The first tikkun is that it is ya'eh. It's ya'eh, it's pleasant. Creates a pleasantness. And that pleasantness is the organization principle at the heart of the Saros. That after the Shvira, what happens is there's a new light that comes down in correspondence with each of the parts of the Shvira. And there's a union that takes place between the fixed parts and the broken parts, and the fixing and the building take shape. And those combinations create the partsufim, the ma'oros, moments in existence through which HaKadosh Baruch Hu's infinite light is grasped by way of the neshama. A mitzvah, a moment of Torah, a moment of emunah, these encounters with reality, these microdoses of universes, each moment has all of the things contained within it. And so the organizational principle at the heart of existence is what creates the beauty. It's what creates the inner beauty of existence. That's the first tikkun that the Sa'aros are engaged in. There's going to be a second tikkun that the Sa'aros are engaged in, and that's going to be the secret of halbasha. What we're seeing here at the lofty levels of the tikkunim of the Gilgalta, at the outset of the Olam HaTikkun, which is where these partsufim begin to be built. So we're encountering the fundamental principle of how the higher level reveals itself within the lower level. This is the ultimate question of how the inside can reveal itself on the outside and still maintain its interiority, how the infinite can express itself downwards and still remain infinite, how the higher level can descend down into a lower level and still remain itself, how wisdom can go down into the heart without losing itself, how the heart could go down into the body, how one level interacts with that which is below it. All relationships, ultimately. This is the secret of halbasha, engarment. The way in which the inner reveals itself towards the outer is that the outer becomes the garment that covers over, thereby revealing the inner quality. The inner quality, the thing that's wearing the clothes, so to speak, is in and of itself the essence. It's not something that's subject to revelation. It exists where it exists. In order to create the bridges of communicability and expression downwards, there has to be an engarbment process where the lower levels of that higher level begin to be engarbed by a lower level. To be engarbed by a lower level means to be covered over and revealed through that lower level. Because what a garment does is it covers over the bare self, but at the same point, in the act of covering over, it enables the self to be revealed by way of measure. Ha-he'elem hu hagilui. The concealment, the containment, the halbasha, the putting on of a garment covering over the bareness of the inner level is ultimately the thing that effectuates the possibility of that inner level being revealed. So in any process of halbasha, what appears to be a diminution and a minimization and a concealment of the inner quality of light, which is now covered over by garments of a lower level, the ultimate truth is that the garments of the lower level are containing that upper light so that it can be revealed in imaginable and expressible way down here right now. That without the lavush, there is no graspability. There is no ability to behold of the higher levels, because if it's a higher level, it annihilates the notion of a lower level. The secret of halbasha is the way in which the lower level contains the upper level within itself by way of concealment and containment and snius and tikkun. This is the secret of the levushim. And this is a sugya that runs from the beginning of the Torah to the end of the Torah, from the Begad of Adam Harishon up until the big day Tefartech of Mashiach Tzidkenu. But this is the secret of Habasha al Regel Achas, what we're talking about. The upper level is always revealing itself within the lower level, and the lower level serves as a garment that contains, conceals, thereby revealing the lower level, the higher level. But now that the higher level is being revealed through a garment, it's no longer overwhelming the system. The garment is almost like a shock absorber that is able to receive the entirety and the whole measure, so to speak, not really the whole measure, but a main part of the measure of the inner quality. And it contains that potency and it reveals it by way of halbasha. So that when I'm experiencing at the lower level, the light that's coming down through the garment, even though it's not the full measure by way of quantity of the inner level, on a certain qualitative level, at the tamsit sahara, at the quintessential point, at the heart of the whole gilui that's coming through the garment, a person is receiving the full measure of the upper realms. Like the Balatanya brings in the mashal, that if a person goes to try and hug the king, they're not going to say, I didn't hug the king, I only hugged his clothing, because hugging clothing of the king is hugging the king himself. The whole secret is coming to reveal how the person who's wearing the clothing is revealing himself within the clothing itself. That's the secret of halbasha, of engarment. Now, one other important nakuda with regards to engarment, garments cover from the neck down typically. There's certainly notions of head coverings and kippas and yarmulkes and hats and different types of things, and all of them are discussed by the Ramchal here or elsewhere. But typically, garments cover the body and down, meaning to say, the garment can only capture the lower part of the upper level, but there's always going to be a part of the upper level that does not get contained within the engarment of the lower level. That's referred to as the head, the gar. The gar, the gimleration, the keser chachman bina, or the chachman bina and das of the upper and inner level is not contained by the engarment of the lower level, because that, even if it went through all of the processes of engarment, it would still overwhelm the system, because gar is gar. In that place, there's no concealment. And so that part remains transcendent. The gar of the upper level, the upper part of the upper level, remains transcendent to the lower level's grasp. But the halbasha, the engarment of the lower level upon the upper level, is typically only in the zayin tachtonim, from the Chesed, Gvur, Tferes, Netzach, Hod, and Yesod, and Malchus of the upper parts of. And those Zayin Tachtonim, that lower part of the upper world, is now being revealed within the garment of the lower world. And so what the Ramchal is going to be megala to us here is two things. What the Zohar is showing us is that even though when we're dealing with the Gilgalta, when we're dealing in the realm of Keser, there's ultimately no real engarment. Nevertheless, we're talking here about the Zayin Tikkunim of Arich Anpin, the 7 rectifications and the different type of processes that allow the infinite light to come down into existence. We saw the Kruma da Avira. And now we're in the second Tikkun, which is the Saros. And so all of these processes are also halbasha, they're also garments. They're garments to what? They're garments to the inner light of Atik Yomin. Because we know that the Zayin Tachtonim, the lower seven spheros of Atik Yomin, are mislabesh, they engarb themselves within the upper parts of Arach Anpin. And in these upper worlds of Arach Anpin, in the Moichas Tima'a, in the Avira Dachya, and those are the places in which the seven lower spheros of Atik Yomin are being revealed, which means to say that over here we're encountering the true secret of Halbasha, that the Gilgalta of Arich Anpin is mislabish on the Zayin Tachtonim, of Atik Yomin, and that's the secret of Halbasha. The secret of Halbasha is that the inner is revealing itself through the lower level's containment of it. That's the Levush. So here, these hairs that are emergent from within the Gilgalta are, on a certain level, the levush, the halbasha of the Gilgalta. The Gilgalta's light is inaccessible in and of itself. It's the light of Or Ein Sof. It's the realm of Or Ein Sof, the Avir Dachya. But it's through the sa'aros, it's through these hairs that emerge from within all of these processes that we've described already, that cover over the Gilgalta like a levush, like a garment of hair, that covers over the Gilgalta, thereby enabling it to be revealed a little bit more. And so here, the second tikkun of the Sa'aros, which is what Rabbeinu Ramchal is going to be pointing out, is the secret of Habasha. And this is what the Ramchal says. He says, Va'amar mechafyan al Gilgalta. These hairs cover over the skull. V'zeh inyan acher. This is a second type of tikkun. Now, the Zohar Kadosh earlier says that it's Ya'eh v'Shapira. Now, the first tikkun seems to be Ya'eh. That's the arrangement and the organization of the configurations of existence. And although Rabbeinu Ramchal doesn't say it here, it would seem that perhaps we can say that this second tikkun would be connected to Shapira. Shapira, which is beautiful. Shapira, which is a beautiful thing and an enraged thing, not only a good thing, but a beautiful thing. It's the art set of the Heliger of Pinchas Karitzer, of Pinchas Shapira, and so Shapira is this tikkun, it's this halbasha process. And so it says as follows: Mechafyan al Gilgalta, these hairs cover over the skull. Zetnin acher, it's a second type of tikkun, hanimsa b'sa'aros, that we find by the hairs. Kizeh haklal, this is the principle. And we're going to see the principle of halbasha is that what appears to be a diminution is in truth a furthering of the inner quality revealing itself. The halbasha is not the concealment or taking away the upper or inner light. It's that which allows the inner light to be revealed. We know that we can only grasp the king by way of his garments. That's the wisdom of Yahadus, that it's through the Torah, it's through the Shem Havaya that Klal Yisrael has the ability of grasping Atzmusis Baruch Kavechol. It's mislabish within his Shem. And that's the levush, that's the habasha. And the habasha is not a concealment, but rather it's a furthering of access. It's the he'elem that is the revelation, the containment and the measure that effectuates the ability for infinitude to come into graspability to one degree or another. And so what appears to be a degradation is in truth going to be revealed to be in truth just a furthering of the inner qualities that are taking shape. A growth process rather than a destruction. So this is the language of the Ramchal. This is the second tikkun that we find by the Saros. Kizeh haklal, this is the general principle. Ha'ma'oires oisim pe'ulos rabos lefi riboy bechinos hanimsaos bahem. All of the things that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has created in the world, all of the lights, all of the points of revelation that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is choosing to reveal himself into existence as, they all represent many different things. Pulos rabos lafi riboy bechinos hanimsaos bahem. They have many actions, and that's based on the fact that they have many parts to themselves. The Torah of bechinos. So it's not just one thing. One thing can do two things. And so the hasaros yesh ben bechinas hamshachas hashefa lezer anpin kanizgaleel. So one element of the sa'aros is, like we described, the organization of these configurations and the partsufim, so ultimately the light of above can be drawn down into the parts of Zer Anpin, into consciousness. But there's also another element, v'yesh od behem bechina acheres. And what's the second aspect? V'hi hayois levush Shel HaGilgalta. This is the garment of the Gilgalta. The saros that emerge from the inside and cover over the outside are the garments that allows the Gilgalta to be revealed. The Oimer Lecha Po Sod Gadol, and I'm going to tell you here a very big secret. That which is said with regards to Shaul, Hamalbishchem Shani im Adanim, that he was engarbed in begadim of Shanim and Adanim. And this is the secret of the pasuk, Livshi Bigdei Tefartech Yerushalayim Ir HaKodesh, that the clothing should be the begadim of Tiferes, in the light of Yerushalayim. Now, what's strange about this pasuk, and what seems to be motivating and pushing the Ramchal's Gilui here, is that l'chayra, Tiferes, Zer Anpin, the inner level, shouldn't be referred to as the Levush. Malchus is the Levush. The next lower level is ultimately where the Gilui is going to come out from. So why are the clothing being referred to as Tiferes? The clothing are the lower level that covers over the upper level to reveal the upper level. But why are the clothing, which is the lower level, being associated with the upper level? The clothing seems to be a secondary mechanism. It's not rooted in the upper level. It seems to be the lower level that comes to enable the revelation of the upper level, but to ascribe the levush itself to the upper level, bigdei tifarteich, clothes of grandeur rather than clothes of concealment. So that seems to be contradictory to an external version of halbasha. But here's the big secret that the Ramchal is being megala. V'da ki halevushim nimtzaim el hanukva mitzad hazachar v'zehu hakavod hagadol shalach. That the garments, that the feminine quality of nekeva, that malchus engarbs the zachar, engarbs the masculine principle. That's the honor of Malchus. The honor of Malchus is that it has the ability to be the habasha for Tiferes. That the role of begadim, the role of the levush, the lower level that contains and conceals the upper level so as to reveal it, that's not a diminution. That's rather the opportunity to reveal the inner quality to a higher level. The levushim are rooted in the upper level. The goal of the levushim is to reveal the inner quality in a deeper way. What is this? Let me explain what the matter is. There's a principle that every offshoot covers over its source. Every outgrowth covers over and conceals the root source of something. Every expression covers over the essence. Because essence is unexpressible. The shorish is not revealed. An anaf, an outgrowth, an extension, something being revealed, by definition means that we're no longer dealing with the shorish. If I can describe it in detail, I'm no longer in the place of that detailless general principle. And so every unfolding level, every prat covers over the light of the cloud. It covers over its root. And what's that secret? Sod ha'inyan ateres zakenim b'nei banim, that the crown of the grandparents is their grandchildren. That ultimately the grandchildren, which are the lower generation, they cover over the previous generation like a crown surrounds something. Because the fulfillment of the thing that is giving birth is in the thing that it gives birth to. That the wholeness of the root source that is generating the light is in the light that it generates, because that light that is generated from the source then becomes a garment for the light that's being generated. Va'az toldaso hu shivcho, and then the tolda, the anaf, the outgrowth, the levush, the malchus, the lower level, is not only not concealing, but it's the shevach itself of the upper level. Because now the upper level is able to express itself by way of a new level of wholeness. That it's revealed, that the malchus itself is revealing the upper level. It's not concealing the upper level. It's revealed through the concealment of the lower level. So the he'elem is the giloi, the containment, the halbasha, the engarbment, is the very thing that's motivating the furthering of the revelation. This is the purpose of the outgrowth. V'nikra levush el hamoilid. It's referred to as a garment to the generative source. Because the upper level is in truth concealed and contained within the lower level. It's not hidden. It's not hidden. Just to review what we're seeing the Ramchal explain here, that this apparent garment, which appears to be a diminution in level, is in truth a furthering of the inner level. That the fulfillment of the generative source is in that which it gives birth to. Because at that point, the outgrowth becomes the point of praise for the source. And now the inner light and the inner quality that had given shape to this next outgrowth is now moved and directed and furthered by this external level. This is the purpose of why the higher level wants to reveal a lower level, because the secret of halbasha is that now the higher level can be expressed even further. V'nikra levush el hamoilid, and the lower level is referred to as the garment of the higher generative source. Kihu be'emes mitkaseba, and the reason for that garment being referred to as the light that it's covering over is because the light that's being covered over by the garment is in truth containing itself within the garment. It's hiding itself within the garment. This is what Chazal mean when they say in Sanhedrin Kufay Amid Beis that a person can find themselves in a state of jealousy with people, with everybody but their child or their student. Why? Because based on everything we've been saying, it's clear because the child and the student are not an externalization of the teacher, but rather they're a furthering of the teacher's light, because the vessel is in truth an unfolding of the light. The anaf it miskasa al neshorish, and the shorish is megala in the anaf. The reason that a person doesn't experience jealousy with their child or their student is because the child or the student is an outgrowth of the individual. Mitkasa alav, it covers over the upper level, and therefore the upper level is being revealed and furthered within the lower level. This is also how it operates above. The upper levels want to be miskala lamata. Everything wants to find halbasha. Everything wants to find its place within containment for the sake of revelation, because that's not concealment. It's concealment for the sake of revelation. This levush that shines is not really the most externalized form of the garment, but rather it's the externalized form of the garment that emerges from the upper level itself, which is why it has this capacity of the masculine principle. Ultimately, what the nekeva is the demus of the tzelem. It's the re-imprint of that original, more interior source, and it's the stamp of the secret. And so the garment, the engarbing, is ultimately the containment that reveals that which is being contained. And this is the secret of the deshayim that grow and cover over malchus, over the land, these small outgrowths, these small hairs that emerge to cover over malchus. Beside desha, what is desha? What are these slow and steady hairs that grow, that cover over for the sake of concealment? Desha is Roshei Tevos, Diyukno Shel Aviv. Diyukno Shel Aviv, the visage of his father. Pile Playim, the visage of his father. Yosef HaTzadik, the outgrowth, the Levush, the Halbasha, the Ateret Yisoid. Yosef HaTzadik is a Halbasha to Yaakov Avinu. And that's why the face of Yaakov reveals itself to Yosef, because the Av is mislabish within the Ben. The Desha, which is the growth, which is the covering, is ultimately rooted in the source that's being covered. This is always the secret of Tzimtzum. This is the secret of clothing that are associated with Tiferes, which is their anpin, which is the inner masculine quality. In truth, the concealment and the concealing levushim are rooted in the upper level, and all degradation is ultimately for the sake of furthering revelation. Al kain l'Shaul ne'emar, and therefore to Shaul HaMelech, HaMabishchem Shani Madanim. Shaul HaMelech, the light of Yisoid, is going to be engarbed in garments of a higher level. But Tzarech Sheteda, a person has to know. And here the Ramchal is adding something very big and very secret, and he's going to run through it very quickly. Up until now, the relationship between the Galgalta and the Moichas Tima'a has been that the Golgalta is the masculine light of Chachma, and that the Moichas Tima'a is the lower light of Bina, because the light of the Golgalta can't be revealed, and only the Moichas Tima'a, which is where the Yud Gimel Tikkun Dikna come from, is where revelation begins, and that's associated with Bina. So that the Golgalta is the Zachar, and the Moichas Tima'a is the Nekeva. But there's another way of looking at it to say that the Avira itself and the Golgalta is a Nekeva because that's the light of Bina, because that's going to be the Igul Hagadol, like the surrounding nature of the cranium. It represents something more primordial in its forms of governance. And through that realm, we're going to see a reversed relationship between the Moichas Tima'a and the Golgalta, that the Moichas Tima'a is going to be Chachma, that reveals itself downwards in the Seder Ashtalshlus, but the Golgalta is going to be Bina, but Bina because in the interiority of Bina, there's going to be a light of Keser. And so what the Ramchal is going to point to here is that the Golgalta, in spite of the fact that it is a masculine principle and it's being covered over because ultimately it's going to be revealed downwards, nevertheless, there's a way of reversing the relationship. And this has many nafkaminos in the writings of the Arizal. B'tzarech sheteda ki afal pisha amarnu shachachma stima'o hilechas el hanukva v'hagolgalta mamshich el hazachar. Right? Even though the general relationship that we've spoken about thus far between these upper levels of the Golgalta and the Chachma Stima'a, meaning to say that the Golgalta is the masculine principle that expresses itself downwards to the masculine principle by way of revelation at Zer Anpin, and that the Chachma Stima'a is what goes down to Nukva, like we saw by Mayim Chaim Yerushalayim. Nevertheless, Aval B'Bechina Acheres, there's another way of looking at it, which we saw a moment before, that there's many ways of looking at everything, and there's no machlokas. There's no machlokas. On the innermost level, there's no machlokas between the pratim. Aval b'bechina acheres, in another way, hine hachachma stima'a koileles b'soid yud hei vav, shehu soid hamoichin shel hazachar. There's another way of looking at it, because we said already that what moichin exists within the Chachma Stima'a, waiting to be revealed down below in the Seder Ashtalshlus, that's the Tala de Bedulcha, that's the light of the Tal, that's the Yud, Hey, Vav, B'milei Alfin, that is the Gematria of 39, which is Tal, and that's the upper three Kavin, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, that are searching for the light and illumination down below by David Malcolm Mashiach. And so, even though we've said all along that the Chachma Stima'a is an Akeva because it's going to be the lower level that begins to reveal the lower levels, the Seder Ashtalshlus, nevertheless, there's a way of looking at it as the masculine principle because it has within it the Yud Hey Vav B'milei Alfin, which are Moichin of Zachar, which would then make the Golgalta, which we previously saw as Zachar, into a principle of Nekeva, which is receptivity, which has the general principle of encompassing and encircling, and that's what we see by the skull, that the skull surrounds the mind. And so there's a way of looking at the skull itself, the lights of the Golgalta, as Nekeva as well. And in this way, the Chachma Stima'a is Moitzia as Sa'aros lahalbish as Golgalta. And from this perspective, Chachma Stima is the thing that's generating these sa'aros. It's what's generating these outgrowths that are going to encompass the light of the Golgalta. And that's the language of Habam Bishchem, Shani, and Madanim. This is the secret of the hairs that cover over the Golgalta. There's another tikkun that are found in these sa'aros. His chalkam lefi seder ha'hanhaga al ha'Golgalta. The Golgalta itself, in spite of the fact that it doesn't enter into revelation as we know it, nevertheless, its revelation and perpetual revelation continues to have an impact on the fabric of existence. And as such, there's an extra added benefit of these saros, in addition to the seder of the partsufim, in addition to the process of the habasha. There's also the particular tikkunim that are taking shape up in the realm of the Golgalta itself. Kula haivu ulai, everything, it's important to remember that everything I'm saying is b'derech efshar, and my humble understanding of the words of this tzaddik and HaKadosh Baruch Hu should bless us to take everything l'uvda ulamaisa and to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu more and more, and that we should never fall into chachmasa meruba meimaischem, that a person's wisdom is greater than their actions, and that everything should be goyre mehir tshuva and kabbalas tovos and odio ter tov and more good be'ezras Hashem.